Rachel Reeves, the Labour Party's Chancellor-in-Waiting, has ignited a political firestorm with her latest education reform proposal, a plan to strip private schools of their tax-exempt status and slap them with a 20% VAT on tuition fees. Starting January 1st, these changes promise to generate significant revenue, purportedly to bolster funding for state schools. But not everyone is buying Labour's narrative. One of the fiercest critics, former Middlesbrough Mayor Andy Preston, delivered a scathing critique on GB News, accusing Reeves of spearheading a policy driven not by fairness but by malice and spite. Check out the clip of Andy Preston delivering his scathing critique on GB News.
There seems to be a tricky balance for the Labour government because, of course, if parents are priced out of sending their child to private school, they end up in the state sector, potentially putting pressure on the state system, as some people would argue.
Absolutely. Good morning, Cameron. Good morning, Dawn. Hi. Yes, I mean, the whole movement to penalise, to tax the private school system was based on, in my opinion, malice, spite, and a desire to satisfy anger in the left wing of the Labour Party. And when Rachel Reeves gave her budget speech back at the very end of October, the biggest single cheer for all of the dozens or even hundreds of things she announced was for taxing private schools. Clearly, what's going to happen is many people are going to leave private schools and go into the state sector. And at very best, this tax will make no money. It might actually lose money, but it was never intended to. This is today part of a bigger story, I think, covered by The Telegraph, isn't it? About a huge tax raid. I have to say, having read The Telegraph's article today, it's part of an ongoing campaign by The Telegraph and a few other newspapers to present old news and basically describe Rachel Reeves as a bit of a devil. Now, I'm not here to defend Rachel Reeves by any means, but what The Telegraph has published today is really old news and nothing new. However, there's a new angle to it, and I'll be very quick with this, is that what someone has calculated is that the range of tax rises, including employer NI, that are coming in very soon, add up to the biggest single transfer of money from the private sector to the public sector, because, of course, Labour are using all of this money to fund public sector wage rises and create new government departments. So it's a huge transfer.
Preston didn't mince words. He claimed that the policy had little to do with improving education and everything to do with penalising a section of society Labour perceives as privileged. This was never about generating money to do good work or improving people's lives, he said. It's about punishing those the left wing of the Labour Party has chosen to vilify. According to Preston, this move marks the biggest single transfer of money from the private sector to the public sector in modern British history, but he doubts the funds will actually reach struggling state schools. Reeves and her allies insist the measure is about fairness and ensuring all children have access to quality education, regardless of their socio-economic background. Labour argues that private schools have long benefited from an unfair advantage, operating as charities while catering primarily to the wealthy. Removing this tax break, they say, is a step toward levelling the playing field. Yet Preston and other critics have raised concerns about the unintended consequences of this policy. One major fear is that the higher tuition fees resulting from the VAT increase will force many parents to pull their children out of private schools, swelling the ranks of an already overstretched state education system. Labour doesn't seem to have considered what happens when thousands of students suddenly need places in state schools, Preston said. Where's the planning? Where's the infrastructure? Social media erupted with reactions from parents, educators, and political pundits. One parent expressed outrage over the sudden financial strain, tweeting, "If this is what Labour calls fairness, they can keep it. My kids' school fees just went up 15% overnight." Another user countered, "Private schools should pay their fair share. This is long overdue, and it's about time Labour stood up for working-class families." The divide is stark, with supporters hailing the policy as a long overdue correction and opponents decrying it as an ideologically driven attack on choice and opportunity. Even within Labour, there are murmurs of unease. Some moderates worry that the move could alienate middle-class voters who see private education as a hard-earned investment in their children's futures. Preston's critique didn't stop at the policy's motivations. He also questioned where the money raised from the tax would go. Labour has promised that the funds will be used to boost state school funding, but Preston is sceptical. This isn't about better funding for schools, it's about plugging holes in public sector budgets, raising wages and expanding government departments, he argued. His warning struck a chord with those who have long questioned the efficiency of public spending. Beyond the immediate controversy, this clash over education policy taps into deeper political and cultural tensions. For decades, private schools have been a flashpoint in debates about inequality and privilege in Britain. Critics argue they perpetuate a two-tier education system, while defenders say they provide an essential choice for parents and relieve pressure on state schools. Labour's decision to tackle this issue head-on signals a bold, if risky, attempt to redefine the boundaries of fairness in education. Meanwhile, Reeves has doubled down on her commitment to the policy, framing it as a cornerstone of Labour's broader effort to rebuild Britain's public services. Private schools must pay their fair share, she said in a recent interview. For too long, they've benefited from tax breaks that have done little to help the majority of children in this country. This policy ensures that every child, no matter their background, benefits from better-funded state education. But the debate shows no signs of cooling. Preston's comments have emboldened other critics to speak out, including some within the private education sector who warn of dire consequences. "This isn't just about a few parents paying more," said one head teacher of a London private school. "We're looking at a potential collapse of smaller schools that can't absorb the extra costs. The knock-on effects will be felt across the entire education system." Amid this uproar, Labour faces a difficult balancing act. On one hand, the policy aligns with the party's commitment to tackling inequality and championing public services. On the other, it risks alienating a segment of voters who might otherwise support their broader vision. For Reeves, the challenge is clear. She must convince the public that this measure is not just fair, but also effective. Public reaction to Preston's GB News interview highlights the polarising nature of the debate. While some praised him for calling out what they see as Labour's punitive approach, others accused him of defending an outdated and elitist system. The conversation has also spilled into other areas of policy, with critics questioning Labour's broader spending plans. Reeves's policy is just one piece of a larger puzzle as Labour positions itself as a government in waiting. With the next general election looming, the stakes are high. The controversy over private school taxes underscores the party's willingness to take bold risks, but it also exposes the challenges of governing a deeply divided nation. As the January implementation date approaches, all eyes are on Reeves and her team. Will they be able to weather the storm of criticism and deliver on their promises? Or will this policy become a liability that haunts them in the months and years to come? For now, one thing is certain. The battle over education reform is far from over.